for about 8 or 9 years. And Dave Shepard has been coming since day one. So I met Dave through that opening of this service here at Unity. And Dave had been a longtime member of Unity prior to me arriving here to lead service in the morning. And I quickly took a liking to Dave, his no-nonsense, straightforward demeanor, and just his love of the message of transformation, personal growth, and spiritual awakening. He just really wanted that. You could tell almost every service, and my partner Lisa reminded me of this on the way up here, almost every service he was just saying how rich and how thankful it was for him to participate in this, and just the meaning and the impact that it's had on his life. And when Dave had come into the challenges that he faced a few years ago, Annie, Lisa Massing, Jamie, a few other people that were near Dave really kind of formed sort of an inner circle. And we would see Dave quite regularly. And it was then that I started to deepen my one-on-one relationship with him. And, Joe and I were talking before service just now, and I totally relate, and I wanted to share this from my own experience, what Joe said. And that is, no matter what Dave was going through, even during the most challenging times, and they were challenging, always upbeat, never this sort of, cloudy, dark, hopeless attitude, and just an inspiration to be around. And, this is kind of what I wanted to do for Dave today, even though he probably wouldn't want so much of this, knowing what he said in the past, but this is for all of us to share in honoring him and celebrating him. I wanted to bring a little bit of that flavor of Sunday morning into our service today, just to sort of prime the pump and get people into a space of inner receptivity to who Dave was for them. So I would like and invite you to kind of clear your mind of all of the surface stuff that's been going on and kind of tune into that presence of Dave in your heart, who he is, and who he's been for you. And know that as you're doing this, as you're really settling into that felt experience of connecting with Dave in your heart, that he is here with us. He is in some way, shape, or form celebrating with us, joining in this time together. And we just want to bring the intentionality of connecting to the spirit of Dave and bringing this love to Dave. One of the things that, Dave seems to represent for me is the adventurer, somebody who liked to set out on the sort of open road kind of a thing and explore and discover and just feel the thrill of life. And so we want to kind of imbibe that adventurous spirit and bring that into this space. In fact, I actually had a dream of Dave last night. I was very thankful for that when I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning, right after having the dream. I wasn't sure what preceded the event or the situation that I remember seeing Dave in, but I made my way into a minivan in the dream. And there was a couple of other people in the minivan, and I look, and coming out of a building was Dave, kind of like what you see there, like really bright and in full form, and walking towards the minivan, and he peeks his head into the window, and he said to me, "So where are we going?" And it was, I woke up, well, let me finish the dream. So I said to him, I can't, leave. I actually am studying in the minivan for some reason. I'm studying because I have a final exam I have to take tomorrow. So I can't go. So I got out of the minivan and I walked around to the passenger side where he had peeked his head through the window, and I gave him a big hug. And that was the end of it and the dream. And then I woke up and I'm like, well, what is that message? What am I, getting from seeing Dave and hearing him say what he said? And it was that adventurer, somebody who's ready for the next step, the next journey, the next voyage. So where are we going? It's bright, it's new at the beginning. And there's, a thrill to his voice as he had said it. So the poems that I want to share with you this morning kind of connect to that pulse of the hopefulness, the brightness of the next stage on the adventure. Okay. To set the tone for the poetry that I'm going to read, I think it's very nice to borrow the words of this Chinese scholar, David Hinton. And he's speaking in general about Chinese poetry, but this kind of goes for everything that we're going to be looking at today. He says, poetry is the cosmos awakened to itself. Narrative, reportage, explanation, idea. Language is the medium of self-identity, and we normally live within that clutch of identity, ego, consciousness. Identity that seems to look out at and think about the cosmos, as if from some outside space. But poetry pares language down to a bare minimum, thereby opening it to silence. And it is there in the margins of silence that poetry finds its deepest possibilities. For there it can render dimensions of consciousness that are much more expansive than that identity center. Primal dimensions of consciousness. So we want to be in that silence of that inner connection with Dave as we kind of go into this poetic field of joining together. And so in keeping with the line of the Chinese poetry, I just figured I'd read something quickly from Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. This is in chapter 13. Life and death, favor and disgrace, praise and blame, success and failure. All of these conditions confuse and dismay us because they are the same ailment. They cause a dis-ease in our states of mind and related worries. How does this happen? When favor is acquired, so is the fear of losing favor acquired. If someone thinks that the physical body is the limit of the self, then the fear that is inherent in the body makes itself known, and it is difficult to subdue. How can you trust and accept your physical limits in the face of fear? We have fear when a limit itself is absorbed in self-importance. If you view the unlimited world as the self, then you can both trust the self and the world. Because only the person who sees the world as themselves and their self as others will truly be compassionate to both. So I would just invite everyone here not to set limits on Dave as if he were a corporeal or physical self only. That there is something boundless to Dave's nature as there is something boundless to ours. And that's what drove Dave to be here every Sunday that he could. He tasted that, he felt that, he wanted that. And every week, Lisa and I, or every other week, Annie, Lisa, we would all go and sit and talk with Dave, and that conversation continued up until the very last. He was always looking for that for himself. And it's really the trusting that Dave is finding that for himself as well. Just a couple more brief poems here. This one from the immortal Rumi. This place is a dream. Only a sleeper considers it real. Then death comes like dawn, and you wake up laughing. You wake up laughing at what you thought was your grief. But there's a difference with this dream. Everything cruel and unconscious done in the illusion of the present world, all that does not fade away at the death waking, it stays, and it must be interpreted. And this groggy time we live, this is what it's like. A man goes to sleep in the town where he has always lived, and he dreams he's living in another town. In the dream, he doesn't remember the town he's sleeping in. He believes the reality of the dream town. The world is that kind of sleep. The dust of many crumbled cities settles over us like a forgetful doze. But we are older than those cities. We began as a mineral. We emerged into plant life and into the animal state, and then into being human. And always we have forgotten our former states, except in early spring, when we slightly recall being green again. Humankind is being led along an evolving course through the migration of intelligences. And though we seem to be sleeping, there is an inner wakefulness that directs the dream, and that will eventually startle us back to the truth of who we are and where we are. So there is a poem that will be shared later in light of this message, a poem from a great Zen master. And it's basically saying the same thing. Dave is really unborn. We appear in this world like a dream, and we go out of this world like a dream. But there is something immortal with us that is behind the scenes always. And again, it was that Dave really wanted and loved. And I think is on the next stage of discovering that. And this leads us to the final reading here, discovering that on the open road. So here's Walt Whitman, the Song of the Open Road. From this hour I ordain myself loosed of limits and imaginary lines, going where I list, my own master, total and absolute. Listening to others, considering well what they say, pausing, searching, receiving, contemplating, gently, but with undeniable will, divesting myself of the holds that would hold me. I inhale great draughts of space. The east and the west are mine, and the north and the south are mine. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness. all seems beautiful to me. I can repeat over to men and women, you have done such good to me. I would do the same to you. I will recruit for myself and you as I go. I will scatter myself among men and women as I go. I will toss a new gladness and roughness among them. Whoever denies me, it shall not trouble me. Whoever accepts me, he or she shall be blessed and shall bless me. So again, I invite anyone who wants to come, share their heart and their stories, and we'll just keep going to the next. So feel that this invitation is standing, so when the next person is ready after the first, you just follow on your own accord.
Was blessed. With Dave's presence. There was a whole group of us, Berta and Jamie and Eva and Bobby. Anyway, we would go to his house, and he always had coffee ready, some really great coffee, and sometimes he'd bake something, and we'd put on Abraham tape, and then we'd talk about it. And Dave was extraordinary in that when he didn't understand or he didn't agree, he said so. He quite simply would say, wait a minute, I don't get that. What's that all about? So like you said, he was a seeker, he was always looking, and always looking to make a difference within himself, and for the rest of us. He was a great guy. And those moments at his house are precious to all of us. Love you, Dave, wherever you are.
I'm Ray Ryson. I can't remember the first time I met Dave, but it was here at church. And as the years rolled by, we were both on the board of directors, and were surprised one day by the sudden exit of a minister, and we had to kind of catch loose ends and put things together and organize services, and it just went so amazingly smooth. Because Dave was like a rock of what's best, what's next, what do we need to do, and what is the right thing to do. And he was always consistent in that. And it was a pleasure working with him. And we experienced, and we'd shared this idea many times together, that this church went through a renaissance. It was changed and flowered in such a way we couldn't imagine how many volunteers just sprouted up to do things and take care of details, and no matter what needed to be done, there was somebody there to help. And it was such an amazing thing, and Dave's character held through it all. I mean, he was solid, and he was consistent, and always with love. Also, over the years, we had the chance to go skiing together with Tom Walsh and our significant others, and we had such a great time, and he fell in love with the mountain that I go to, And he would rent a condo there afterwards and stay for a month, sometimes 2 months, just to enjoy the Powder Mountain. And it was so interesting because when I would go out there, he would be there with a truck, say, hey, where do you want to go next? We'd go into town or see a movie or do something like that in the evenings. And just such an enjoyable character to be with. And his parties at his house where we would get together with a potluck or watch a movie, etc. Dave, I miss you, and I enjoyed your smile. Thanks for being here.
My name's George. I'm a friend of Dave's. I was really presented with when I heard about Dave's passing, Annie passed it along to me, and I'm like, geez, how am I going to handle this? Because how am I going to show up authentically, knowing what I know? That was the question. And I'm still not sure I have the answer. We are such faceted creatures, and the parts I knew of Dave, or just the parts anybody knows of anybody, they're just, it's like that blind Indian feeling his way around I don't know if it was an elephant, and he's like, well, no, this elephant, he's smooth like ivory, or like a rope, but how do you talk about somebody? And then I realized, I can relax. It's really not up to me. I can just share some of my thoughts. And also, we learn from people by following their examples, and also choosing not to follow their example. And that's pretty much true of all of us. As Ray mentioned, Dave offered a space to gather people together around a meal and have usually some kind of a focused conversation. We tried focusing on Marianne Williamson. We soon tired of that. But there was always some kind of a focus. And he would share with me also like his love of travel, and how, like, one time he flew to Puerto Rico and met somebody, I believe it was at the airport, and he ended up like spending 2 weeks with them. They opened up their home to him, and he wasn't interested in the surface trip. He wanted to get down in there, if you understand what I'm trying to say. I hope you do. Also, this being many-faceted we also have dark sides of ourselves. And Dave didn't mind sharing some of that stuff with me. And I think it was in the trust that, you know, I'm safe sharing this knowledge with you, and that you're not going to judge me for exposing these vulnerabilities that I have. And I think that's really important for us to do with one another, to accept the wholeness of somebody. And it's, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I was reluctant to speak. I think because Dave still lives for me, and he and I've been very close to him for a real long time. We participate in a lot of things together, and what really struck me when I was speaking with John about was how independent he was, and how he just accepted things as they were. You know, he and I were going through some similar things in the last couple of years, and we were able to speak about things together that oftentimes are uncomfortable, it seems. But what I'm most grateful for about Dave is he liked to do things himself. He didn't like people doing things for him. He wanted to maintain his, independence. But he allowed me to contribute to him sometimes, and we spent a lot of time in conversation about some of those things that he was speaking about, the dark side, and I've known him for many years, and he's opened up so many things for me. And the last time I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago, I really kind of begged him to let me do something, so he did. I got him 2 egg muffins and brought it to his house. And anyway, he was just a real great fellow, and like I said, he inspired me, and he continues to. So I love you, Dave, and I know you're well. So yeah, thank you.
To speak. I've known Dave for, the 20 years that I've been here at Unity, and the one thing I miss about him the most is that, closer? Oh. The one thing that I liked about him the most is I'd call him up and we could just, huh? Oh, turn me down. I could call him up. I can talk better over here. No? Okay.
I think he turned it down now.
Okay. I forgot what I was going to say. No, I didn't. I call him up and we would talk for a half hour or an hour. He was the easiest man to talk to I've ever known. And I go to Maine in the summer, and we were talking that he had been traveling with his travel camper thing, and he'd been in Maine, and he said that he went to this town that he just loved, this town and these people, and come to find out it was the town that I grew up in. And his trailer was there in storage somewhere, so the next year when he came and got it, he visited me at my place in Maine, and I got to take him for a boat ride, and but he was on the way again, off and going somewhere else. So I'll miss Dave.
Anyone else?
I apologize, I'm going to read this. I'm not good off the cuff. Dave Shepard was born October 7th, 1944, the youngest of a passel of kids raised on a farm in Crossville, Indiana, where his parents had a party barn and hosted weekly dances into their 80s. Dave clearly inherited their energy and sense of fun. He went to more diners and dives than he could count, and for years he was the champ of the boot scootin' boogie. I met Dave and his wife Betty in 1994 when they pulled in, terrified, to the Stewart City dock after their maiden voyage from Crystal River in their spanking new sailboat. They knew absolutely nothing. They didn't know where the lines went, how to raise the sails, nothing. But their enthusiasm was infectious, and in the few days they spent in Stewart learning the basics of sailing and sharing the first of many happy hours and meals, we became fast friends. Over the ensuing years, Dave and I became for each other a reliable sounding board. A new boyfriend, what did he think? An idea for a business, what did I make of his plans? Divorces, moves, personal tragedies, new houses, new jobs, everything got the once-over. Politics, books, religion, movies, music, friends. We picked it all apart and put it back together 1,000 times. We plotted to buy a town in Italy, a tapas bar in Portugal. We shared hundreds of happy hours, dozens of holiday dinners, and collected many friends along the way. Then 2 decades ago, in one of his low points, Dave's health issues exploded with an emergency quadruple bypass. Friends took him in for a long recovery, and he eased, then surged back into the sign business that had been his livelihood in Tennessee. Within a couple of years of that first heart attack, he was building billboards, selling signs, and doing whatever it took to be a success. He continued to fight off health issues and enjoyed life, cruising the Bahamas and Cuba, before he swallowed the hook and started seriously traveling on land. He spent months in Europe and spent time in China and Thailand, and who knows where else. I lost track. Then in his late 60s, he started skiing and succumbed to the call of the West. And like all else, when he set out to see America, it was full on, months at a time, going to the highest peaks and the lowest valleys. Dave loved the West. Life was a constant superlative for Dave. It was always the tastiest pizza he'd ever had, the most spectacular drive in the world, the most interesting person he'd ever met. But when Dave came back from his travels, he didn't just bring the t-shirt. He brought new foods to share, stories of great adventures. It wouldn't just be New Mexico he loved. It was the amazing hand-carved doors in Santa Fe, or the great little hotel in Taos, where an Indian played guitar in the lobby in the afternoons. Then, 3 years ago, Dave suffered a massive stroke that completely dominated his life ever after. But despite being told he'd never walk again, then losing his leg and being told he'd never be independent, Dave thumbed his nose at friends, doctors, family, everyone in his life, and set out to prove he could and would do those things. Dave was always a get a bigger hammer kind of guy, and he took that approach to himself. He treated the paralysis from the stroke like a recalcitrant nail, that if he just pounded it hard enough, it would straighten up. If an hour a day of physical therapy was good, 4 hours was better. If living in a wheelchair was what he could expect, walking into a restaurant was the least he wanted to do. He forced himself to get stronger, get better, and he did it, defying every expectation. And he walked, badly, with a prosthetic leg that gave him nothing but trouble, with a walker that he shuffled forward, but he walked, and he never stopped trying. On the last day he knew, he had spent some time by the river visiting with a friend. It was a beautiful day, but he grew tired, and with a wave, he headed home on his trusty chair. Nearly there, he slumped over and stopped for the last time, his spirit flying with the sun. His death was recorded a few days later, on January 20th. We'll miss him.
How's this? Can you hear me? Well, I guess it's kind of clear we all share different parts of each other's lives. So glad that Val knew Dave for such a long period of time, could share so much of the parts of Dave's life that I knew nothing about. He and I met right here at Unity, and our relationship developed pretty much as support as his health was declining. At first, we had our midwinter dinners at Rocky Point, and they were a high point for our in the middle of the week for our small band of people who were like said, studying Marianne Williamson, or also we're doing nonviolent communication, other things, just keeping on the path. We also had our morning glory breakfast after John's talks at 8 o'clock, and we'd hash over, what do you think he mean by that? So all of this reinforced our practice and understanding of what it truly means in this life to be a family to each other. As Dave's travel ranges shrunk, he and my talks became mostly on one-on-one or breakfast with John and Lisa and whoever showed up at Three Baristas. Our conversations were often filled with what it takes to live life gracefully within bodies that feel like they're about to reach their expiration dates. So, I don't know, I'm going to cry. So my knowing Dave was really more about knowing the end of his life than the beginning or the middle. And it also came at a time, Dave's passing came at a time when the wonderful Vietnamese monk, who everyone knows, Thich Nhat Hanh, died almost, within a day of Dave. And I thought it was really fitting. It sort of seemed to me that it was such an emotional experience for me left on the planet. But I like to imagine the two of them together as companions, continuing to explore and adventure and seeing the next journey that we will all have to all learn about at some future date in our lives on Earth. Would you read the poem? You did such a good, I mean, John, you can do this. And I was going to read this, but I'd really prefer, I think he would do it better justice. Mhm.
Life without boundaries. This body is not me. I am not caught in this body. I am life without boundaries. I have never been born, and I shall never die. Look at the ocean and the sky filled with stars, manifestations of my wondrous mind. Since before time, I have been free. Birth and death are only doors through which we pass, sacred thresholds on our journey. Birth and death are just a game of hide and seek. So laugh with me. Hold my hand. Let us say goodbye. Say goodbye to meet again soon. We meet today. We will meet again tomorrow. We will meet at the source of every moment. We meet each other in all forms of life. So if we could just rest in the silence that the poetry evokes and invokes within. And just that silent, invisible bow to Dave's sacred self in this heart-to-heart communication. That whatever bespeckled character we all may embody on this earth walk, there is the sacred center, the core of who we are, that shines in innocence forever. And we are on this journey to uncover, unveil, and rediscover this happy, natural goodness that we just lose sight of and forget, but it never goes away. We are safely at home, sleeping, dreaming we're in another town. And so for a moment, let's put aside the dreams and in the silent bow acknowledge our brother in the light of who he truly is, with a mind of forgiveness and true embrace. We love you, brother. Happy trails. And so it is. So thank you all for being here. It's been an honor to meet you and to hear from you, the heart's outpouring. And speaking of outpouring, there are bottles of rum on the back table to those who feel inclined to take one home as a keepsake, being Dave's favorite drink, so I'm told. And there's also this beautiful poem that Annie has put together with a sprig of rosemary, which symbolizes what, Annie? Remembrance. So those are there for you when you are ready to leave. We thank you. And for those joining us on Facebook, we appreciate you tuning in. Hope this service touched your heart and that you were able to connect with us in honoring Dave Shepard. Okay, my friends, have a beautiful afternoon. Farewell for now. And what? And, oh yes, and we're going to play this song going out. It's one of Dave's favorite bands. Oh, and sign the picture. There's a picture of Dave that Valerie had put there. Sign it, and we're going to send that picture to Dave's family. So again, thank you all. Peace.